Welcome, everyone. Thank you for joining tonight's webinar, Spring Forward, Drop the Baggage, and Leap into the Career and Life That's Waiting for You, with career coach and UCLA alumnus, Jim Hort. My name is Joseph Blancas, and I serve as an Associate Director for Alumni Career Engagement at UCLA Alumni Affairs. In today's program, Jim will help you understand how to access an entirely new level of clarity and confidence to motivate you to put yourself first and take on what's next for you. I wanted to take this opportunity to thank our Alumni Association sustaining donors. It's with your help that we are able to strengthen the Bruin community with career programs like this. For some general webinar housekeeping, we will have time at the end of our program for a Q&A with our speaker. So please use the Q&A function below to submit your questions, and we will get to them time permitting. We will also be recording the event, and we'll send it out once the recording is made available. Now, to start our program, I'm excited to introduce Jim Hort. Jim specializes in helping intelligent, inquisitive professionals navigate vocational change with the confidence born of innate wisdom coupled with proven science. He offers in-depth values discovery workups for people contemplating a career change, strategic planning for those facing career disruption or workplace problems, and step-by-step guidance in breaking through achievement plateaus using cutting-edge motivational science. He also works with clients with career challenges precipitated by disruptions in other areas of life, such as divorce, midlife crisis, or substance abuse. Jim, we're happy to have you here with us this evening. Thank you for joining us, and I will turn it over to you to start our program.
Hi, Joseph. Thank you for the wonderful introduction. And before I get started, I just want to thank you and Allison and the rest of the team there and the Alumni Association for all the hard work that you put into making this happen for all of us. So thank you. And hello, everybody. I love the introduction that Joseph gave, and it might give you a little flavor of the way that I work with people. I'm billed as a career coach, and I'm here under the kind of umbrella of the career engagement, program. However, I don't work like a lot of career coaches, okay? And I want to tell you right up front that I'm not going to be talking tonight about how to write the best resume or what's the strategy for transferring skills from one field to a different field. Okay. I view those as, this is going to sound maybe blasphemous, okay, but almost the easy part. Okay. Or at least the part that we tend to get fixated on without asking ourselves the real questions, the deeper questions. Okay. And when we get fixated on the strategies and the tips and the tools and just putting one foot in front of the other, we sometimes can get lost or stuck because the path that we're on isn't a compelling one for us. And so, when you're facing a difficult transition or you're feeling stuck in your career or at a loss for what to do, in really any, whether it's in your career or any area of your life, what's happening is the status quo isn't working for you anymore. And there's an opportunity there for it to fall away and reveal something underneath that's more authentic for you. And so, even if that's something that you're not fully conscious of yet. And so what I'd like to kind of frame this discussion as tonight is an opportunity to look at difficult transitional periods in your career and anywhere else in your life as really a gate that you can walk through to develop a greater understanding of what makes you tick, and then set a course from there. Okay, so the fact that any transition can open that gate then is kind of what informs the title of this talk, that we're dropping the baggage and leaping into the career and life that's waiting for you. Okay, and for that reason, it's also applicable to a wide variety of people. Okay, so sure, if you're feeling stagnant in your career, hopefully I'll be able to help you tonight. If you're unsure about your path in your career or in life, sure. But even things that we don't traditionally think about as career issues are pertinent here in our discussion, like maybe just difficulty being consistent in things that you do in general. or if you find that you always put yourself last and other people first. Okay, these are the questions that, whether it's a career disruption or a disruption, like Joseph said, in divorce or substance use, if you start asking the right questions, you end up kind of in the same place. Okay, wanting to know what's going on, like, why am I living a life that isn't feeling right? And what I'll submit for your consideration is that what's often happening is that you've ended up sort of boxed in by circumstances, by early conditioning, by a number of factors that have limited your ability to expand and grow. When I was a student at UCLA, I had a friend who had pet iguanas, and he was certain, and he was right, that an iguana will only grow as big as the cage that you put it in. And he wanted to really kind of see how big these things could get. So what he did is he turned his whole apartment into a terrarium basically, kept the heat on 24/7. It was like an oven when you walked in there, but the whole place was basically an iguana cage. And you'd go and these things would be like little Godzillas, up on top of the drapes. And that's because iguanas are something called indeterminate growers. Okay, they'll just keep growing and growing to their full natural potential. And we're the same way, not physically, but psycho-emotionally. And when that process and that potential is stunted or stifled, we suffer for it. Okay, so what we want is to get you here and let you keep growing and keep expanding. Okay, so that's what we're talking about tonight. The premise is then that the solution isn't about ignoring or avoiding the difficult situation that you're in or the difficult thoughts or feelings you're having about the situation, but rather turning toward it, seeing it clearly, and seeing what you can learn about yourself from it. And also that neither I nor anyone else needs to add something to you that you don't already have. This process is about revealing what you've always had. Okay? And that the performance that we seek, whether it's in our career or elsewhere in life, can come from wholeness and integration and meaning. Okay, if we can claim those, then the performance will follow. So let's revisit quickly who I am. So Jim York, that's my name, and I call myself, I wear several different hats. I'm a personal development trainer, career coach. When I'm wearing this hat, I'm a psychotherapist, and in private practice. Also, I'm a clinician at the Resnick Neuropsychiatric Hospital on campus in the adult partial hospitalization and intensive outpatient programs. So there I'm helping people who've suffered serious mental health challenges navigate that transition from the hospital back out into an outpatient setting, and hopefully on a more fulfilling and gratifying track for their life. I'm also a mindfulness meditation teacher, certified through UCLA's Mindful Awareness Research Center, hypnotherapist, and generally what connects all of the work that I do is kind of my mantra, developing greater insight into ourselves, and then combining that with the latest science and psychology and neurobiology, social psychology for peak performance and well-being. Okay. And also I'm a Bruin, very, very proud Bruin. In fact, this is my favorite talk of the year. I love being around this crew. So, and I develop a new talk for this every year too. So let's get into this. We're going to be covering a lot of ground, okay? As I framed this, you might be thinking this is a really big discussion that we're about to have, and it is. And in fact, I do full day workshops on this topic. And in fact, I developed a 6-week course on this topic. So there's a lot to cover, and obviously we're not going to get to all of it in 1 hour. So I'll give you some high points and some tips and tools, and at the end, we're going to do a little exercise. So please have a piece of paper and a pen handy by the time we reach minute 45 or so. Oh, and also, Don't feel like you need to take notes because at the end, I'm going to provide a link where if you'd like to sign up for my email list, then you can download the slides and just sit back and eat some popcorn and enjoy the talk. Okay. So here's the kind of 3 categories I want to hit tonight. How did it get this way? Why is change so hard? And then what can we do about it? So let's start here. Now, again, we have an hour here tonight. I don't intend any of this to be the last word on any of these questions. Okay. But over many years of doing this, I'll just share with you some of the observations I've made. Okay. That a lot of times we can trace back the difficulty that we're facing, determining what to do in our career, what direction to go, why we're getting stuck, etc., to early conditioning. Okay. So let's say here you are. Well, actually, let's stop here. So here's you. I'm depicting you as a circle. Okay. You're a system. Even though you're one person, you're a system because you've got a physical body comprising many different organs. You've got a mind and a psychological life, etc. So there's a lot of internal pieces to you that make up the you. Okay. So you're a system unto yourself. And maybe you have a partner or some other loved one in your life. They are also a system. Okay. You're also connected to maybe a city or a country, maybe some kids, a workplace or school, dog maybe. Okay. Notice how each of these is its own little self-centric universe. Okay, let's take a closer look at one of these. Say you and your workplace. So here's where your membrane, your boundary, if you will, makes contact with the boundary of work. Okay, but it's not quite so cut and dried because if I'm looking at you in your workplace, actually, I'm going to see you as part of the workplace as well, right? You're both separate from it and a part of it. And then if we want to drill down even further, well, your workplace isn't just your workplace. You've got a supervisor and colleagues, okay? Looks like a mean supervisor in this case. Okay, so same thing if you have a family, a couple kids, loved one, a dog, right? So you interact individually with each of these separate systems, and as a family, you're all part of that system. And from the perspective of your dog and the kids, maybe you and your partner comprise a parental unit. That's another system as well. So the world is made of systems, okay? And you interact with many, many of them, and you're a part of many of them. And notice how in those examples I gave you, you see that there's never any overlap in any of those systems, no matter how many pieces are in it. Okay, no piece overlaps onto another, and there's never any empty space in those systems. Everyone plays a role precisely to complete that system, with one major exception, and that is when you're born. So here's your family of origin. Here's a family of origin. In this case, let's see, what do we have? We've got a couple parents, a couple kids, and an older adult in this family of origin. Yours, of course, will look different. So you can see no overlap, no empty space. And then when you come along, some or all of the people kind of scoot over and make a space for you. Now, of course, you're a newborn baby. You have no say over this whatsoever. You're just given a space and then you fill it. You're poured into it, almost like Jell-O. And you take a set in that shape. Long before you even have any self-awareness. When you do start to gain self-awareness, it's in that shape. So for all you know, all you've ever known is that shape. Okay, so it seems quite natural to be that shape. And so then as you get older and start crawling and then walking and then ultimately driving and moving out independently in the world, if we haven't been allowed to individuate properly and really claim space of our own, we can end up moving around the world in that same shape that we were given long, long time ago, looking around for other holes, if you will, or other molds to hop back into. Okay, because that's what fits. That's what feels right. Okay. And so that's why sometimes you can find yourself, reenacting the same behavior pattern over and over again, even if it's not working for you. Or maybe you end up in the same kind of toxic workplaces over and over, or the same relationships that don't work over and over. Okay, because you're a key and they're a lock, and the two fit. Okay. Well, sometimes then, if we're fortunate, something could disrupt the status quo. Okay, like something happens at work and you start contemplating a career pivot, or maybe the relationship goes sideways and you end up getting divorced, etc. And like I said earlier, that status quo falls away, and maybe you get a little taste of, oh, wait a minute, maybe I want something different in my life. Okay. And so you start to expand and grow, and you end up bumping up against this conditioned self. Okay, that isn't actually the shape of your core self. Okay. And that doesn't feel good. That produces psycho-emotional pain, that's anxiety, depression, and then all the sequela of that, all the different ways that we sort of self-medicate and compensate for that kind of discomfort. Okay. So what we want then is to see if we can kind of dissolve that conditioned self and allow, again, you to reach your full natural shape. Okay. Why is change so hard? Well, we've got frenemies everywhere, but we got two main ones. Okay. The first one is the society of which we are a part. This massive system, of course, right? And we play one small little role in it. But it's so important because we're social beings. We're wired as social beings. We're like the most social of all social beings. The extent to which we can experience depth of connection with another has everything to do with our ability to thrive as human beings. The research is really interesting around this. They seem to think that we only need about 5 or 6 people that we have a deeper sense of connection with. And by that, I mean someone with whom, when you're with them, you can see yourself reflected in their eyes as someone who matters, who's worthy of care, of concern, maybe even love. Okay. Those people don't need to play any particular role in your life either. Your therapist can be one, your son, your daughter, partner, whatever. Doesn't actually matter what role they play. Okay. It's the quality of connection that matters. So we crave that. Okay. And at the same time, we have this really primitive conditioning to do this thing called impression management. So impression management is the way we curate the image that we present to others so that we increase the odds that we are kept within the tribe, as it were. Okay. So this serves a really basic kind of evolutionary purpose for us. Our odds of survival are better if we stay in the tribe than if we're kicked out. And so we're wired to care what people think about us. And so we're wired to some extent, to varying degrees, present this impression that may be different than our authentic self. And in that regard, a split can form between our authentic self, our core self, and that presenting self. Okay. Then we look around and we're comparing ourselves to everyone else's impression that they're presenting to us. These probably idealized presentations, right? And we're moving through a world of these idealized presentations, and inside we know where all the skeletons are buried in our life, right? And so that comparison usually brings us up short relative to other people. So we've got this, this process that tends to demoralize us and cause us to feel like we're not as good, we're less than. Okay. And also, this frames our world extrinsically, okay, meaning in ways that we can see, touch, eat, buy, okay, all the stuff that drives our economy, okay, because that's all we can really go off of, right, is what we can see and touch, other people's presentations. So I'm going to talk a little bit later about the importance of the distinction between extrinsic and intrinsic perspectives on the world. Okay, so that's the social piece. So hold that thought. Now we've got another frenemy that's right on top of our shoulders here. It's the human brain. It's kind of unique. I'm going to draw this line here, and I'm going to draw a distinction between these two parts of the brain. This is a very, very oversimplified way of looking at the brain. If there's any neuroscientists here, don't send me hate mail, okay? What I'm talking about here is not so, it has something to do with the anatomy, but I'm really talking about a division of labor here, okay? We've got below that line, the reptilian brain, these really primitive instincts, okay, whose mission is to survive, okay? Very primitive. We share these instincts with every other animal. It's very reactive, okay? And it views the world in extremely simple terms. If this feels good right now, it must be good for survival. If it feels bad right now, it must be bad for survival, period, end of story. And the moment it reaches a determination about which one it is, it'll react to move you away from discomfort and towards pleasure. And it tends to look at the concrete things, those extrinsic things, things that can be seen, touched, because it's very primitive in its anatomy, okay? These lower order parts of the brain, like the brainstem, the amygdala, they don't have the ability to sort of think in abstract terms, okay, in the way that the human, what I'm calling the human brain does, the cerebral cortex, okay? Its mission is different. Its mission is for you to thrive. So you could think of that as self-actualization, or this other term that I like, eudaimonic well-being. Comes from the Greek, eu meaning good, daimon meaning spirit. So it's a type and scope of well-being that's big enough to include even when you're having a bad day or a bad month or a bad year, okay? Because it's big enough to include all of it. Okay, that's eudaimonic well-being. That is what your human brain wants for you, okay? So it's more evolved, literally. It was the later stages of our brain's development. It's more responsive than reactive. And that's thanks to, you can see my cursor right around here, you got your prefrontal cortex. They call that the CEO of the brain. So that's the part that can take in all the data. Here's what's happening. Here's the thoughts I'm having. Here's the feelings I'm having. Here's what I want for my life. Here's what I don't want. Put it all into the prefrontal cortex, and then it can say, you know what, given all that, this is what I'm going to do. Okay. And it's boundless because it's able to think, and it wants to move you toward things like values and qualities and feelings, okay? Things that don't have a finish line. Okay? These are the things that really gratify us and energize us and motivate us as human beings. And they're limitless, just like you and your psycho-emotional self and well-being. Okay, some other distinctions here. So one thing, in addition to that connection that that I mentioned that we crave as humans, is to have meaningful activity. So really putting some effort into something that is going to produce long-term well-being and gratification for us. Meanwhile, your reptilian brain hates making effort, okay? Effort doesn't feel good. I mean, it doesn't feel like pleasure, right? So like, why would you make effort if you don't have to? This is the way it thinks. Your human brain wants you to grow. Reptilian brain doesn't like discomfort. Unfortunately, you can't grow without discomfort. Okay, if you've ever been to the gym and tried lifting weights, you know that. You have to get outside. When you get outside the status quo, it's sort of by definition going to be less comfortable than the status quo was. Okay, and so the reptilian brain wants to keep things the same, even if what currently isn't that great. We want connection as humans. The whole point of the reptilian brain is to keep us from being vulnerable, though. Well, how can you have an intimate connection with someone without some vulnerability? And I'd argue the more intimate the connection, the more vulnerable you have to be for that to be a healthy relationship. Okay. Human brain craves novelty. I think to our cave people ancestors, like wanting to see what's over the next ridge. But the reptilian brain doesn't want change. It's like, that's fine just where we have it right now. No need to get up off the couch and go exploring, right? Got everything we need right here. So if you put all this together, you've got a brain that, due to the greater evolutionary strength of the reptilian brain, it tends to be the default, okay? We tend to default to it, and it is always enacting survival strategies that will help you avoid discomfort now, but then cause you to suffer as a human being later, okay, for the decisions that you made. Then you've got the world around you that's kind of complicit in this, right? The whole economy sort of rests on you being interested in the next shiny object that promises to make you happy. Okay. It's directly appealing to that reactive, extrinsically oriented reptilian brain of ours. So we buy into all this and we start getting attached to how we think our life should look. Okay. And we might even develop a really long sort of chain of events in our mind of how our life should play out. Sometimes it gets really long and really detailed. Like, I'm going to go get some exercise today so I can be more physically attractive, so I can find the partner that I want, so I can have a family, and then ultimately a house with a white picket fence. And then when I'm old someday, I'll be on a porch swing holding hands with my partner, and I'll have made it. I'll have it all. Yikes. Okay. The longer those motivational chains get, the more astronomical the odds that it's ever going to work out that way. Okay. And we fall off that tightrope that we've created for ourselves, and we suffer and we get disoriented. And now what? Now I don't have a plan for this. Okay. So that the attachment to how our life should look can be a real problem. Okay. And then inertia, of course, start living a certain way and it just becomes a habit, and becomes harder and harder to break that habit. Okay. So hopefully I've set the stage for how it got this way, why it's hard to change, and hopefully I haven't bummed you out too much. Because now we're going to go to the third part. What can we do about this situation? Okay. We got 3 steps, 3 general steps that we can take. So let's start with the brain, okay? We want to get ourselves back in the driver's seat. Us, our core self. Our core self resides in the cerebral cortex. It's in the human brain, not the reptilian brain, okay? So we want to emphasize the activity of the human brain and its prominence in our daily life. And one great way to do that is to cultivate more mindfulness. Okay. Now notice I'm not saying just meditate more. I'm talking specifically about mindfulness. There's a huge evidence base around its efficacy for a number of things. I'll maybe say more about that in a second. But what is mindfulness? If you ask 100 different mindfulness people, they'll give you 100 different definitions. The one that works for me is that it's a combination of these three things: awareness, curiosity, almost like a childlike curiosity, and acceptance, radical, unconditional acceptance of your unfolding moment-to-moment experience of life. And I'll say that a lot of people get hung up on the acceptance piece, especially if they're having a difficult time. Like, well, I don't want to accept the way things are. The way things are doesn't feel good. So within the context of mindfulness, that's not what we're saying. We're not saying to accept the way things are for all time. We're saying that each unfolding moment of your life is something to which awareness can be brought to, along with curiosity, and then acceptance of it just as it is. Okay. And when we do that, something really special happens. We start redirecting bandwidth from the reptilian brain up to the human brain. And specifically, we get less amygdala activity and more prefrontal cortex. Remember, this is the CEO of the brain. The amygdala, that's our fear center, where we're hyper alert for threat. Okay, and so we find that the amygdala is less activated and physically shrinks, actually, if you meditate enough, and your prefrontal cortex becomes more activated. Okay. And therefore, when your prefrontal cortex is more involved, you then have the ability to be more responsive, like I was saying earlier, to the events of your life. So when you're at a crossroads in your career, you're better able to say, okay, what is it that I really want in the long term? What can I learn about my situation right now that can maybe provide some clues about what I want in the long term? And then what should I do to have more of that, rather than that knee-jerk reactivity that's conditioned by the amygdala? So mindfulness has been studied now since 1984. It provides a variety of physical health benefits, like lower blood pressure, lower rates of heart attack, better immune system functioning. Also, a variety of mental health benefits, everything from helping you reduce levels of anxiety, lower your rate of depressive relapse. If you've been depressed before and you feel better now, mindfulness can help you from slipping back into depression. Okay. And on and on. But for our purposes here tonight, what I want to emphasize is that it helps the part of you who ends up living with the decisions that you make actually make the decisions. Okay. Because what often happens is our reptilian brain is making the decisions. It's writing the checks that your human brain has to cash. So we can flip that relationship with mindfulness practice. And it doesn't, the more the better. The studies show that even as little as 5 minutes of practice can start producing benefits for you. And then I've seen studies that go all the way up to 22,000 hours, which they were studying monks who meditate several hours a day for years. And what they find is a pretty linear relationship. Every moment, every minute, every hour that you spend practicing goes into the bank. Okay, every little bit helps. A little bit helps a little, more helps more. And you can practice anytime, because mindfulness is a state of mind. It's a perspective on your unfolding moment-to-moment experience. So you don't have to wait until you're in a yoga studio. You don't have to wait till you're on top of a mountain somewhere. You can practice mindfulness at a concert, walking down the street, shopping for groceries. Okay, as long as you're bringing awareness, curiosity, and acceptance to that unfolding moment-to-moment experience. So that being said, if you're just starting out practicing mindfulness, I do recommend that you avail yourself of some guidance. It can be very helpful. So one I want to mention is Mark. This is the Mindful Awareness Research Center at UCLA. They have guided meditations on the website. There's also a Mark app that you can download with some guided meditations. So you could start there. They also have something called the MAPS course, Mindful Awareness Practices class. And so they have MAPS 1 and MAPS 2. And those are 6 weeks long and provide a real kind of soup to nuts introduction to the practice, and will really get you off and running with a well-informed and consistent home practice. So I would definitely look into that too. They have both online and in person now. There's also Mindful Magazine. They have some guided meditations there. Despite the fact that it's a magazine, it's actually pretty legit. And then there's my own website. I recently added some short ones, like 2 minutes long. I'd have one that's my favorite, which is a 40-minute mindfulness tour, where I guide you on a tour of all of your different senses and then the activity of your mind. So feel free to check that out as well. Step 2 is about the limiting beliefs that we've had, okay, that often find their way in to our mind from an outside source, but we don't realize it, okay? And it so happens, maybe you've noticed this, that our tendency, our default assumption is that our mind is telling us the truth, right? If we think it, it must be true. But in fact, that's not the case. Our minds, give us propaganda, essentially. They lie, they spin, not in a way, not because they're out to get us or sabotage us. They're always trying to help us in some way. They're trying to alert us to some issue, real or imagined, importantly, so that we can tend to it and avoid some kind of pain, okay? And again, this is something that's sort of motivated by that reptilian brain. It doesn't realize that it's causing you problems as a human when it's doing this, right? So what we want to do is start to attune to what I call dust, okay? Discouraging, unreliable self-talk. Okay, these are the little statements, little beliefs that pop up, especially at times of stress or transition, that, anytime you feel discouraged or pessimistic or sad or worried, there's probably a speck of dust floating around, okay? So we want to find one. Let's say that this is one, for example. Maybe you're facing a career pivot and you're in your middle age, say. And you have this thought, I'm too old to try something new. Okay, it's discouraging, it's unreliable, it's self-talk. So now we're going to subject this to what I call the dust buster. Now, if anyone is familiar with cognitive behavioral therapy, this is a little bit of a spin on that, okay? What we're going to do first is look at the facts and the fact-based arguments that support the belief. And we're not going to do what our natural inclination is, which is to reject the idea. Oh, I don't want to think this, right? And then we find a million different ways to numb ourselves out or deny it, ignore it. We numb it out with substances or scrolling on our phone or food or whatever. And that might feel good in the moment. But remember, there's a part of you that's worried about something. And if you ignore it, push it away, all you're doing is telling that part of you that you didn't get the message. And it'll crank up the volume until you get the message. So maybe counterintuitive, but first we want to look at, okay, lay it on me. I'm having this thought. All right, what's true about this? Okay, well, it's true that I'm not a kid anymore. It's true that I value stability these days. I need to consider retirement. I should be happy with what I have. Oh, man, I wish I could see you all, because right now I'd be asking for a show of hands if anyone sees any problems with any of these. But since I can't see you, I'll say, we've got a problem here, okay? I should be happy with what I have. Okay, here's a little pro tip. Any thought that you have that contains the word should or always or never is almost guaranteed to be dust, okay? This is an opinion. This is a subjective belief. Moreover, it's probably a belief that was imparted to you at an early age. Okay. This, if it pops up in your list of facts, pull it out and do a separate dustbuster on it. Okay. Then and only then do we look at the other side. What are the arguments? And they got to be facts and fact-based against. Okay, well, I don't feel old. I do feel stagnant. I don't want to die wondering what could have been. Multiple careers are common. This is true. Okay. So the next step and the last step is to take that work that you've done and develop a new perspective. And that involves doing three things. First, we're going to restate the situation and the dust. Then we're going to summarize the evidence on both sides, and then reach a fair and balanced conclusion and make a statement of intention for what you're going to do next, given that. Okay, so we're calling upon the prefrontal cortex here. Now, I'm going to show you the new perspective on the next slide. There's a lot of words on it. I would encourage you not to read along with me, but maybe just close your eyes and let me read it to you. Okay, because I want you to hear what a new perspective, what the voice of a core self sounds like. Because we know what the voice of dust sounds like, right? I'm too old to start something new. Well, here's what the voice of a core self might sound like. I've been considering a new career path, but sometimes I worry that it's too late for me. And it's true that I'm not in my 20s anymore. And sometimes I feel like I should just try to enjoy the stability and security that I have. On the other hand, though, I worry that I'd regret it if I'd squelch the dreamer in me. I don't feel old at all, and it's exciting to think about a new path. I see others pulling it off, so I know it's possible. I'm going to start experimenting with new career ideas in my spare time. That way, I'll honor my need for exploration and growth and feel more sure about my decision when the time comes. Okay. Now notice how every single word on that page is a fact. So we've taken a piece of propaganda, spin, and we're not denying it. In fact, we're acknowledging that, okay, there's some things here that are true. And then we're bringing up the light on the part that the reptilian brain doesn't care about. It doesn't care about the stuff that is positive. It's only looking for the threat. Okay, so we need to make a little effort to bring the other side up. And then, given all this, what will I do now? Okay. Step 3. So now that we've dropped some of the baggage of this dust that's floating around and obscuring our vision of the world that we want to move toward. Well, why don't we try to discover what our internal compass, what direction it might be pointing us in, okay? So we tend to go where we look. And so that's why this is really important that we let go of that extrinsic focus that society and our brain are both complicit in orienting us toward, the things that we are just right in front of us right now that are going to feel good or bad. Let's take a closer look at this. Okay, so extrinsic motivators are things that are objective, they're actions, valuables, things, they're transient. Okay, it's all the what's of your life. Okay, that's the stuff that, generally speaking, society, certainly commercials, are orienting us toward, and then our reptilian brain is happy to follow along. Okay, versus intrinsic motivators. They're subjective. Okay, subjective meaning they're known only to you. Okay, I could look at you and see whether you have an extrinsic thing, but there's only one person who knows whether you have a feeling or a value or an idea, and it's you. You're the one and only person who knows. And that's what makes these very, very special. Okay. And they're also eternal. There's no finish line to them. So they're like permanent magnets that you can navigate by, and which also contain within them an attractive force that can help you keep from getting stuck. They're the why. What's it all for? That is what motivates us. So extrinsic motivators, I might be sort of making them sound like the villain, but I don't mean to. They make great short-term goals, okay? So if you've ever heard the term of SMART goals, specific, measurable, achievable, realistic, and time-bound, a lot of people think that's the end-all be-all of goals. Well, no, not at all. But for a short-term goal, they're great, okay? But you need to have your long-term goals be intrinsic in nature, okay? And we're running low on time, so I'd love to say more about that, but suffice it to say that the research on this is very, very clear that people whose long-term goals are intrinsic in nature tend to be significantly happier than people whose long-term goals are extrinsic in nature, okay? This is something that they discovered many years ago, and they have replicated many times since. And it's also something that we are never told, really, out there in the world. So I like to think about this as these are peaks that you're pointing yourself toward, okay? And then some extrinsic general paths that you can follow that are pointed in that direction. And then what's the short-term step I need to take? This is where, okay, how should I edit my resume? Okay, that's where this is. When we get caught up in just these, though, without checking where we're pointed first, we can just get turned around and lost and running in circles and never actually making progress toward anything that's really meaningful to us. Okay, so I advise figure this out and then back into these. Okay? The human brain makes that a little tricky due to the wiring that we've talked about. But the good news is if you give this suggestion of mine a try, experiment with it a bit, what you'll find is that there's actually many paths leading to each peak, okay? So your possibilities can expand dramatically if you start viewing your life this way. So for instance, let's say that someone is going to a lot of parties and they have enough insight to know that they're doing it because they feel lonely. Okay, so they're going to parties, but they still aren't really feeling happy. And they've got this one tool at their disposal. You know, that old saying, when all you have is a hammer, every problem looks like a nail. So this person's kind of fixated on parties. They know they're trying to feel less lonely. It's not working. They're not any happier. So what do you do with this? You ask the next question. Okay, lonely for what exactly? Like, there's a lot of different flavors of loneliness. What are you actually after? Okay, so in this case, let's say the person spends some good quality introspection time, discovers, okay, well, really, I'm looking for camaraderie, connection, belonging. Okay, now we're talking. Because now we have some different paths that we can explore, okay? So like maybe, let's see, joining a club or a bowling league, or that what's the thing with the paddles, pickleball league, or maybe for a sense of connection, maybe someone wants to connect with a spiritual community or support group, or for a sense of belonging, meetup group of people that enjoy a similar hobby or of like mind in some way. Or right here at the Alumni Association, right? We have a sense of belonging. We all share something in common. So all of a sudden now, okay, we know, we can drop the thing that isn't working and start experimenting with different paths that may well work. And importantly, even if they don't produce some kind of observable benefit that you really want, you're going to feel better doing something that's aligned with your core values than the alternative. So here's a little exercise I want to do with you, with that piece of paper that I asked you to have in front of you. I'm going to ask you to draw a vertical line down the middle of the paper so that you've got a left side and a right side. The left side is the extrinsic side and the right side is the core side. So on the left side, what are 3 vocational achievements I'm proudest of? Now, for our purposes here, vocation is not limited to paid work. It can also include volunteerism, hobbies. Okay, those all go into the vocational category. I'll give you a minute here, second. Okay, and then what 3 achievements am I proudest of in other areas of life? And keep these short, just little snippets, 1 word or 2 words, boom, boom, boom. Also, don't overthink. Whatever first comes to mind first for a reason. Okay, so those are both on the left. Then on the right side, what values of mine did I honor with those achievements? Okay. What am I doing when I'm in a flow state? You know what a flow state is? When you're really engrossed in an activity and time falls away, and you think you've been doing something for 10 minutes and you look up and 2 hours have passed, that kind of thing. So what's the observable activity I'm doing in those states? And then what qualities of mine are being exercised in those moments? Qualities or traits, characteristics. On the left side, what were my 2 lowest points in the last 12 months? And then we're going to go to the right side for the why. What values did I feel estranged from in those 2 points? See where we're going with this? You were suffering at those 2 points in the last 12 months because there was some value, quality, or feeling that you were running afoul of. And then finally, right side only, which 3 feelings would I like to experience twice as often by 2024? Now we're kind of whipping through these. If we had more time, I'd give you more time and we'd spend a good 10 or 15 minutes giving some thought to these. But again, if you would like to download the slides, I'll give you an opportunity to do that in a second. And I encourage you to spend some quality time on your own with these questions. And then here's a real simple way to get started with this process we're talking about of creating a new path for yourself. Okay. Pick one of your peaks, and every day, take one action in the direction of that. Make one decision in favor of that. Say yes to one thing, say no to one thing, all in honor of one of your peaks. Okay, just one step at a time is how you reveal this and grow this. Okay, so just real quick, the takeaways here. This is really important. Every part of you wants to feel good. The reptilian brain is not your enemy. It's just a myopic, heavy-handed, powerful, dumb friend. It's looking out for you, but doesn't know its own strength. It's like a mice and men dynamic here. Okay, we can't believe everything we think. Please let go of the need for your life to look a certain way, and instead start navigating by how you want it to feel. Okay. Mindfulness will provide a bridge back to that core self. okay, where you're more in greater contact with how you want it to feel. And you're not just going to make it all good and show up for yourself in one fell swoop in the future. You do it every day just by inclining in favor of that core self and those long-term motivators. Okay. And then, so if you sort of navigate by how you want it to feel, it's going to end up looking however it looks. And at that point, does it really matter as long as it feels the way you want it to? So that's where I'd like to leave it tonight. I'm going to put up this page. Here's where we can stay in touch. And here's a code you can scan or a URL you can type into your browser. That'll take you to a page where if you opt into my email list, you can download the slides instantly. So I'll leave that up while I throw it back to Joseph. And I don't know if I think I did not leave enough time for questions, did I?
No, you didn't, but I think it was time well spent. Thank you for the exercise and just all the insight and kind of the science behind it all and why you do what you do. I felt inspired, and I hope that those tuning in did as well. I want to throw in one quick question that I think would just be helpful to get out there for those who are feeling, motivated to try new things.
Mhm.
And in doing so, can lead to procrastination. So very quickly, what are some suggestions on maintaining motivation through this new kind of way of thinking and going about living your life?
So you're talking about procrastination and kind of getting stuck. Yeah. So just recognize that for what it is, guys. Like when you're experiencing procrastination, you're experiencing ambivalence. And that is a real fundamental building block and a fundamental problem. It's kind of at the core of a lot of the mental health challenges we face. People think that people misuse the term ambivalence to mean apathy, when really ambivalence is something different. Ambo meaning both, valentia meaning strength. Okay, it comes from the Latin term. So it's really like a tug of war. So when you're experiencing procrastination, you've got a tug of war going on between your human brain and your reptilian brain. Reptilian brain is a little bit more buff. Okay, so in those moments, it really helps to remind yourself of the why. Okay, for instance, going to the gym, say, that activity makes no sense whatsoever to your reptilian brain. Like, why would you get off the couch and go do something painful and exert energy and spend calories for no good reason? But you know that if you do it, you'll feel better tomorrow, right? And because you're acting in service of maybe your health or your well-being, et cetera, right? So rather than making it a choice between doing something hard or staying on the couch, make it into what the choice really is: staying on the couch or having a healthy future.
Mhm.
Okay.
Great, thank you. I want to be mindful of time. Everyone tuning in, join me in thanking Jim for being here with us tonight and sharing his knowledge and insights. We truly, I can say, I appreciate it and learned a lot. Please be on the lookout for a follow-up email that'll come from me. It'll include a link to a program feedback survey. You will also receive it once we end the webinar. If you could take a few short minutes to complete that, it will help us to determine some future programming coming from our career coaches network. And then lastly, I just wanted to share that we have our next career coaches session on May 25th at noon around charting a path to career success. So we will also be sharing in a follow-up email the link for that. If you don't catch it now, it's in the chat there. And then also I will be sharing out some of the links that Jim shared. So please be on the lookout for that email. But with that, I hope everyone has a good night and go Bruins.
Go Bruins. Thanks, everyone.